hope we, in the meantime, sing the songs that she teaches us. That would be a good thing.
Ask whoever's in charge.
There is no one in charge.
God is in charge.
I did.
Okay, there you go. So in this moment, I give all glory to God. I want to start with this. Perception management for very advanced souls, all of us. The next time someone upsets you, think, thanks for pointing out that I've begun depending on you. It's time I lose the expectations. Or the next time someone doesn't take your view into account, think, that's okay, I was once like that. Or if someone steals from you, think, it was nothing, my supply is the universe. Someone lies to you, have a thought that says, I'm sorry you feel that need. Or if someone violates you, think, all for my growth and glory. If someone is rude to you, think, cheer up, dear soul, it'll be okay. If someone judges you, think, thanks for sharing your truth. And if someone drives by you like a bat out of hell, think, be careful, my friend, I love you. And the next time someone greets you with a smile, smile back like you're sharing a secret. How's that sound?
Good.
So let's talk about channeling God today. And to start, note these words of the Christ in the New Testament, which are a big mystical truth. They say, I speak to them, not in words of men, but in words of spirit. So spirit, as Christ referred to, is God. In effect, he was saying that it was God speaking through him. The Jesus part of his personality or his ego self had to be set aside so that God's presence or spirit could speak directly through him. Now, back in the latter part of the 20th century, the practice of channeling became very common amongst a lot of people. They would gather in groups to hear words of wisdom spoken supposedly through higher beings, gods, goddesses, spiritual guides, angels. No matter which of these were the hypothetical source for the spoken channeling, all shared one common denominator, which was that information came from an outside source. People were receiving information seemingly from something outside their own minds. Back then and even now, people who do channeling have a shared belief, which is what is being channeled is from a source other than God. And that's easy to understand, as channelers, except perhaps for a few of them, claim to be mystics. But mystics, however, are people who deem their contact with God to be the most important thing in their life. Because of this, they have no interest in spending time being a channel for angels or guides and so on. A true mystic comes to believe that through contact with God, their life mysteries and other information revealed by channelers of lesser sources come to their attention. God, or in addition, and most importantly, a mystic comes to realize that over a course of time, their inner contact with God, through that, they become channels for God. Mystics do not advertise themselves and they go around saying, oh, I'm here, I'm channeling God. They do that in communication with other people without stating or emphasizing where that information is coming from, unless they're asked. And when they're asked, the mystic will always give God or universal mind credit as being the source. Spiritual teachers or lecturers will present material that often is straight from the source of God, but will not reference God as the source. An audience out there listening simply responds by listening to them and believing that, wow, I'm really hearing things from a very wise person. When in fact, the person speaking may be hearing for the first time whatever it is that they're sharing, because God is the one that's doing that. And that's because when you're connected to God and sharing that information, it comes spontaneously. It's not something that's planned ahead of time. This same thing can apply to a speaker. A teacher who's writing about spiritual matters. God can take over the surface level of their consciousness and reveal to them great spiritual truths that they may never have thought of before to write into their book. But when those readings are read by another person, that person may simply think that that writer is so brilliant to have all those ideas without realizing that the writer has channeled God onto that paper. Over the years, my clients, my workshops here at Fellowship, writing my talks or the classes that I teach, the personal part of my mind has stood aside also for God to come in or the universal consciousness to speak through me. take no credit for it because I know it's coming from that. And that's why in the beginning of my talks I always say, in this moment I give all glory to God, because I know it's Source speaking through me. Here's Jesus' words from the New Testament. Why call me good? It is not what you shall say before you stand in front of someone, for verily I say to you, at that moment the words shall be on your lips. So even Jesus, in his highly exalted spiritual consciousness, could not take credit for the great pearls of spiritual wisdom that came forth from his lips. He knew that it was God. He knew that it was universal mind that was speaking through him, and he was indeed channeling God. The main point I want you all to get here is that channeling God is possible. Some people may sit there and think like, oh my God, to channel God, to listen to God, God speaking through me. Or we've had, on the other side, people who say, God told me to do this, and they kill somebody or they do something, and so we react to all of that. That's not possible. But it is true that it is possible. And it comes from any man or woman who is totally connected, who is generally committed to God within them, and the pursuit of God through meditation can channel God. Jesus said, even greater things than I, you can do. So therefore, that means channeling God is possible since he did it. In the final analysis, there is but one spirit, one universal life in this universe and throughout eternity, and it manifests itself as everyone in the whole universe, just that one source that we call God. Is it not better then to contact that ultimate mind of God rather than fragments of the mind or individual entities, no matter how involved they may seem to be? Yes, that's what we want to connect to. The truth of the matter is, if you channel God, the spiritual truth that you actually channel is more suited towards your own spiritual needs. Information channeled by others may not be precise in regard to your spiritual journey or situation, and it may be filtered through the consciousness of the channeler. So now, you may ask yourself, do I really want to channel God? Do you? That means not asking it for the purpose of advertising or commercially claiming that you're channeling God, but to really get connected to Source inside of you and firsthand learn from Source the information God has for you for your life, for the incidents that you have in your life, how to speak in front of somebody else, how to write, whatever it is that you want to do in your life, knowing God is there and I'm channeling God. If you choose the mystical direction as your spiritual pathway in life, and you are genuine and sincere and committed to the pursuit of God's presence, then the time may come without warning when all of a sudden, boom, you hear God's voice that you may not have before. You suddenly realize then that you're channeling God, or that God's wisdom and love and humor is coming through you. So there are three aspects I want to share with you about this. Number one, to channel God on a regular basis means you have to meditate on a regular basis. You have to go through that practice of mystical meditation where you put aside your needs. You put aside your personal ego level mind so that you may make contact with the higher God mind that's there within you, that higher consciousness. Real channeling of God's information is not a product of the ego mind because it doesn't believe it anyway. It lives in fear most of the time. It's not a part of your intellectual process. It's a part of opening your heart up and listening, which is the second thing I want to say, second aspect. It is difficult to speak and listen at the same time. Channeling God cannot be accomplished by being in your own personal ego state of mind. When you're so busy loving your ego as the things that you're saying, and oh, look at me, what I have to talk about, you cannot hear God at that moment. So you have to learn to talk less and listen more, especially if in your lifetime you've been a talker. It's time to calm down and listen. A lifetime of nonsense talking pales in comparison to even a few seconds of God's words coming through the ear. Think about that. To really listen to what God has to say. Aspect 3. Every one of us, every soul has a purpose in this lifetime to express one or more unique attributes of God's mind. We're not here separate, alone. We are here to allow God within us to express itself. And think about that in your work, in your relationships, whatever it is during the day. that you have the opportunity to channel God and speak God's truth in that situation. The Bible alludes this to as the Spirit made flesh. This means that God's Spirit and mind incarnates itself in every one of our human creations to manifest some uniqueness of spirit through the flesh. If this is God's purpose for human creation, and I believe it to be true, then every human being, every one of you, is endowed with the capacity to channel God. And I state that as a truth right now. Take it in. Some of us that have that may become philosophers or mystics or intuitives and give forth wisdom of letting God speak through. Some may become poets and speak of love. Some may become artists and create, letting God create through them. Some may become healers and do healing, letting God work through them. And yet some may become humorists or comics. For those who know God know that humor is a strong part of God as well, which is why I always include a joke in the service before the end of it, because God loves humor and we love humor. So, now that I've done that, I'm going to do this. I want to share some affirmations for you, so I'm going to share one and have you repeat after me, okay? Margaret, openness. My conscious mind is open at all times.
Openness. My conscious mind is open at all times.
To channel through thought
Channel through thought
and verbal communication
and verbal communication
from the God mind
from God.
center within me. Cynthia, my intuitive awareness is totally open
My intuitive awareness is totally open
to thought from the God mind center within me.
from thought to the God mind center.
Within me. And the rest of you hear these words because they're all for you as well. Take them in. How about Christine? I refuse to let my personal ego
I refuse to let my personal ego
rule my consciousness
rule my consciousness
and instead turn over rulership
and instead turn over rulership
to God's presence
to
within
God's
me.
presence.
See, this is about will. I give my body, mind, and soul
I give my body, mind, and soul
over to the will of God's presence
over to the will of God's presence
within me.
and me.
Okay. My soul in oneness with God's Spirit
My soul in oneness with God's Spirit
channels God's thoughts and words
channels God's thoughts
through my body and mind.
through my body and mind.
Stepping back, I am at all times aware
I am at all times aware
to let one part of my mind
to let one part of my mind
step back to allow God's mind
to step back to allow God's mind
to be channeled through me.
to be channeled through.
Let's close our eyes for a prayer. Divine mind, my Creator, whose spirit and light lives within me, I affirm and declare that my personal sense of self is always ready to step aside in my conscious mind, that you may use me as a channel for your words and purpose, that I and others may be blessed. For this I give thanks, I let it be so, and so it is. Namaste. Okay, time.